Yes, absolutely. We're very hopeful. This is a long-awaited announcement from government, and as you referenced, there have been many kind of reforms over the years. The care review that was done last year by Joshua McAllister actually described the system as a Jenga tower held up by sellotape, which is a pretty accurate description. So today's announcement really is the government's opportunity to completely reset children's social care. It's a once-in-a-generation chance. So for us, it's about kind of really seizing that opportunity and getting this right for children and families across England.
So do you think, you sound very positive about what's coming? Because I think there is a chance, there is sort of an understanding of being a bit doubtful and not knowing whether to expect, not get your hopes up. Are you confident that this is gonna be the change that's needed?
Yeah, so I think where we are today is we have a strategy that's very ambitious. There's a lot in there that gives us cause for hope. However, where we're concerned really is around the funding that's been set out and the timescale. So while the vision is ambitious, the strategy today really only sets out the timeline for the next 2 years. And what the proposal is to basically test some of this vision and thinking for children's social care in up to just 12 local authorities. So actually the vast majority of children and families in this country won't see any change. And what that means is that social workers across the country are going to continue to struggle with what is an already kind of creaking system. So yes, hopeful, great content and policy intent in the strategy today. However, we need to go further and faster to actually deliver it.
Okay, and you're saying that what's being outlined is good and the right way to do it. There's one of those things was the early intervention and trying to provide that support early on before it gets to the later stages where you see things worsen. What's the importance of going in early and that prevention?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. So at the moment, we've got about 80,000 children in care. That's projected to go up to about 100,000 children in care by 2032. But it doesn't have to be that way. If we can get the right support in place early for families, we know, and the evidence shows this, and social workers know this from their day-to-day practice, that early support will prevent problems escalating and the need for children to be removed from parents' care. So that really is about putting in place a range of services for families. That's children's social care, but it's also the right health services, it's education, it's the police. What we really want to see at the NSPCC is a strong multi-agency response to children's social care early. So that's really the government giving all those agencies that I just mentioned and more the kind of tools and resources they need to work with families as early as possible.
And communicate with each other as well, because if you have a lot of people working on the same, it can sound very efficient, but there can be miscommunications or gaps in communication. Is that a worry at all?
Precisely. I mean, we know, and we've known for a long time, that communication between agencies is very difficult. The strategy today actually proposes consultation on how to get that right. So that is very welcome indeed. But likewise, we kind of know all of this. This is not the first time that these issues have been raised. For decades, we've known that there are issues with kind of communication and multi-agency working. And what we're seeing actually is that services across the country are very stretched. It's quite difficult for those practitioners to have the time and the space and actually just the kind of manpower to do that multi-agency work. So some of this could be addressed with resource right now in the system. So that's what we're kind of pushing for today.
Yeah, it's a £200 million investment. So I think that possibly looks like that's the difference. It is quite a healthy investment.
Yeah, of course, £200 million is a lot of money, and it is obviously very welcome. When you look at the scale of the problem, though, and the number of children and families we're talking about, the investment has been described as actually not touching the sides. So the Local Government Association estimates that we need 1.6 billion just to stand still with children's social care. So you can see the difference in kind of what investment is needed. And the care review last year called for 2.6 billion, which is obviously a lot of money, but it was fully costed, and it did show that if we invest now, in the coming years, that cost will come right down and we'll actually start to save money and reduce the amount of money that children's social care requires. Because at the moment, the trajectory we're on is more children in care costing more money, and we have to turn that around now.
Yeah, it's very preventative, looking at the long term. By intervening now can help. So the money that's being put in now, where that, can you tell me a little bit about where you're happy to see that going? You know, we're seeing like up from £2,000 to £3,000 being added to the leaving care allowance, which is another. I mean, we talk about keeping families together, and that's a priority that, you know, and I know you've spoken about before that that's important, but sometimes that isn't the scenario that they can go with. Sometimes they can't keep together. That's not the best, you know, the best course of action. So what about money going into things like that? Is that important as well?
Absolutely, it's fantastic to see the increase for the care leavers allowance. That will be money for children when they come of age and they leave the care system and they go and set up their own home, wherever that might be. They need enough funding and enough money in their pocket to go and get the right accommodation and to have possessions to put in that accommodation. So obviously that's very welcome. There is also money committed for foster care recruitment, which is really important. We know that we have a crisis, frankly, at the moment in terms of the number of foster carers available to support children. So we do really welcome that. So there are small pots of money for some bespoke sort of piecemeal bits and pieces, I guess. The problem we see is that's kind of how we've been tackling children's social care over the past few decades. We've been injecting small pots of money into little bits of the system. And actually what we need and what the care review called for was wholesale investment across the country to do that reset that we've described. So yeah, of course, any funding is welcome, especially in the current climate. But actually, if we're going to be prudent and save money in the long term, we need to invest to save now.
And is that what this is? This is the investment that you're looking for? Is this, you know, is it not touching the sides? Is it a healthy investment? Is it somewhere in the middle? What are we? Or...
It's a first step, I guess we would probably describe it as. The strategy today sets the direction. It's ambitious and very much welcome. But if we're going to see the ambition actually realised, then we do need to see more investment, and also investment beyond the next 2 years, which is really what this is about today. You know, we need to be looking over the next sort of decade and beyond, really.
So that's the next step, is continue. This is very good, but keep, as long as it's kept up. Is that sort of the response?
Absolutely. And of course, you know, we're coming up to a general election in the not too distant future. So, you know, we'll be calling on all political parties to prioritise children at the next general election. And actually next month, the current government has a spring budget. So again, that's an opportunity to basically put their money where their mouth is and invest in children's social care now, if they can. So yeah, that's what we're calling for. And also actually political leadership. So, you know, at the moment, often children's social care isn't given the political priority that it should be. So we'd like to see a children's minister that sits at cabinet. So that's the most senior levels of government, so that children have a voice at that table. They really don't at the moment. We want to get that, you know, to the level of Prime Minister, the Chancellor. We want them to understand what children and families are facing across the country so that they can make those high-level political decisions for them.
So potentially proving that this is a priority in government with investment and with ministers, and just showing that this is not a one-time injection of, you know, exactly, temporary support. It's got to be looking far into the future.
Exactly. We should be, you know, children should be at the top of the political agenda. So we really want to see that commitment from the government now.